Legends. The Legend of Karl Rehnborg. The true story of MLM, told by the losers, begins not with revelation, but by removal of myth, starting with the once-upon-a-time account of MLM's genesis. All fairy tales include a myth of nativity, and MLM's is no different. According to MLM lore, Karl Rehnborg, founder of California Vitamin Company, later renamed Nutrilite, not only invented today's MLM phenomenon, but is also the father of today's vitamin and supplement business. There is no Wikipedia entry for Karl Rehnborg. He's not referenced as a significant figure in any history of nutrition, except in articles related to or promoted by Amway. Details of Rehnborg's life and work have changed over time and rely almost entirely on his biography, The Nutrilite Story, Past, Present, and Future, written by his son, Sam Rehnborg, and published by Amway. Rehnborg's biography is widely believed to be the most official text for a historical account of MLM's formation, the MLM movement's Book of Mormon. The publisher's description on Amazon states that Rehnborg's supplement pills, quote, spawned the dietary supplement industry, and that he was, quote, instrumental in creating a new method of distribution known as multi-level marketing. Rehnborg's Nutrilite was a tiny, localized, and virtually unknown enterprise. From its inception, it was inconsequential and barely solvent, until a chance encounter between Rehnborg and the actual inventors of MLM's pyramid recruiting plan, Lee Mittinger and William Castleberry. Details of their biographies are strangely missing in the MLM fairy tale. Neither has a Wikipedia entry, and they are referenced in the Nutrilite story only as, quote, national distributors for Rehnborg. Castleberry and Mittinger were also the direct managers and precursors for the two founders of Amway, Richard DeVos and Jay Van Andel. Nutrilite's actual historic notoriety today has nothing to do with inventions and business models. It is infamous for being prosecuted by the federal government for outrageous and dangerous false medical claims about its non-pharmaceutical pills and potions, viewed by the FDA as snake oil and by medical professionals as quackery. The prosecution began shortly after Nutrilite was recognized as the first MLM, and during the time Van Andel and DeVos were among its top recruiters. The Nutrilite story documents the legendary narrative previously retold as oral history. It is the official transcript of MLM's founding by virtue of its copyright owner and publisher, the Amway Corporation. As the oldest and largest of current multi-level marketing companies, Amway plays the role of MLM's priestly authority and primary source in matters of MLM invented history. To promote the legend, Amway not only underwrote the biography, but in 2014, commissioned the casting of a life-size bronze statue of Rehnborg at the Nutrilite Center in California, where, quote, visitors are invited to sit by the bronze portrait likeness of Karl for a unique photo opportunity. Karl Rehnborg died in 1973, a year after Amway acquired his company. There are obvious problems with the Nutrilite story, as with any sex narrative. Yet, in plumbing the origins of new American creeds and movements, researchers, including me, must examine and quote from official texts, scrolls, tablets, and scriptures. Only from a re-examination of Rehnborg's life and times can we learn the true drivers and threads of American culture that gave birth to MLM. When the actual characters and historical events are uncovered, MLM's true character behind its current disguises will become evident. The legend of, quote, Christian MLM. In reverent voices, millions will declare that while Carl Rehnborg is the father of the vitamin supplement business, Amway's famed founders, Richard DeVos and Jay Van Andel, are the true inventors of today's MLM industry. They are the leaders responsible for MLM's mission as a vanguard of Christian principles. With these godly credentials, criticisms or questions of MLM's legitimacy are viewed as not only erroneous, but blasphemous. The MLM model was already well established and beginning to proliferate when DeVos and Van Andel formed Amway. The two Amway owners worked at the original MLM Nutrilite for more than a decade. There, they learned the MLM business model and gained their training. Then, in a pattern that has produced perhaps more than 1,000 other MLM companies, DeVos and Van Andel defected from Nutrilite, took thousands of Nutrilite salespeople with them, and set up Amway as a virtually identical and directly competitive enterprise. DeVos and Van Andel did not originate or invent anything related to the MLM model. They did, however, graft a theme of religious righteousness onto Mittinger and Castleberry's established pyramid model, spawning the, quote, Christian legend. Assuming a self-anointed moral authority, they escalated MLM's deceptive promises to a dogmatic belief system. One noted sociologist, reflecting the mythology in academic papers, called Amway a, quote, quasi-religious corporation. Acting and speaking like prophets, DeVos and Van Andel portrayed their pyramid recruiting scheme as a moral crusade, promising wealth as a salvation and proclaiming failure a sin. On the cover of DeVos's 1975 book, Believe, it says, quote, discover how you can attain success and personal fulfillment through belief in free enterprise, human dignity, God and His church, the American way. The moral tone and Christian rhetoric, blended inexplicably with patriotism and capitalism, were adopted by many MLMs that followed. Christian churches became hotbeds of MLM recruiting with clergy in the uplines. DeVos and Van Andel's religious pretenses for their pyramid money scheme were rooted in the authoritarian and evangelistic training of the extremist Dutch Protestantism of their childhoods in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They attended the same insular religious high school and conservative religious college and never deviated in their entire lives from the fundamentalist doctrines and rigid political views of their upbringing. The Christian Reformed Church in Grand Rapids, a secessionist sect of the larger Dutch Reformed Church, spread with Dutch immigration. In South Africa, the church became a major force in support of the apartheid system. In the United States, the Christian Reformed Church split from the larger group over matters of ritual in 1857. The parents of both Van Andel and DeVos were members of the secessionist group. The newly formed Christian Reformed Church continued strict adherence to fundamentalist views and the basic tenets of Calvinism, including predestination, the association of wealth with righteousness, strict patriarchy, and conservative views on sexuality. Richard DeVos and Jay Van Andel are among the group's, quote, prominent members. Reflecting the fundamentalist character of his religious views, Van Andel gave $500,000 in his own name to a, quote, research institute, the Van Andel Creation Research Center in northern Arizona, to study and promote creationism and biblical flood geology. The indoctrination shaped their brand of the MLM movement. MLM leaders claim entitlement to advise and pass judgment on MLM recruits in matters of marital roles, sexual practices, church attendance, child rearing, and political affiliations. As MLM developed into a large political lobby to protect against fraud investigations, its money-making scheme, portrayed in religious and moral terms, blended with other extremist religious and conservative movements, and culminated in Richard DeVos's daughter-in-law, Betsy DeVos, serving in Donald Trump's cabinet. With this assumed moral authority and righteousness of purpose, MLM leaders could impose a stigma of shame and humiliation upon adherents who lost money and quit or criticized the program. They were stigmatized as, quote, losers and quitters, or, quote, negative thinkers. Shrouded in the silence and shame of the disgraced and discredited losers, the massive program of proselytizing and soliciting funds for a non-existent income opportunity proceeded without public outcry, leaving millions with losses in its wake. DeVos's and Van Andel's religious imprint on a pyramid recruiting scheme has endured as protective coloring and adopted by many other MLMs with variations for conservative Mormonism and socially liberal prosperity gospel creeds. Van Andel died of Parkinson's disease in 2004. Richard DeVos died at age 92 in 2018. Stripped of its pseudo-religious camouflage and the fabricated legend of a visionary inventor, the untold story of MLM proceeds in this next section to examine MLM's true origins revealed in the life and times of Carl Rehnborg. It will disclose how some of America's most infamous scams and fads, financial delusions, and unsavory aspects of door-to-door selling became ingredients of the MLM model. Rehnborg's almost comical follies took him to New York, Alaska, Mexico, China, and the dreams-come-true world of 1930s California. Discovering these banal and absurd beginnings, it becomes possible to grasp today's colossus of deception called multi-level marketing.